So welcome and thanks, Maggie, for the introduction. We're getting toward the end of this series. I'm realizing, everyone. We have this session and then two more. Our next one is the last week of November, a little different this month since Thanksgiving week kind of falls on the week we would have done it. So our next session is November 29th. And then we have one final one 2 weeks later into the second week of December. So yeah, here we are. I wanted to talk a little bit today about a topic that I've brought up in past sessions around self-compassion and how we can sort of interrupt those cycles or spirals of like negative thought space or self-criticism or feeling really uneasy in ourselves, and what we can do to really gently start to kind of pull some of that apart into pieces that we can understand and then work with in a self-compassionate way. And I was thinking about this. Some of you know I'm a clinical social work intern. I'm in graduate school now, so I have therapy clients as well. And I was talking about this recently with my supervisor, how when we come into a practice with anxiety, or when we're experiencing anxiety in our lives, one of the sort of tactics or strategies, coping mechanisms that arises is to just try to avoid it, like distract ourselves, try to push it out of our awareness, which can be really helpful at times, right? Especially if it feels like we just need to focus on something else. It can be helpful to have a distraction or to just avoid. But when that happens day after day, actually the avoidance kind of increases the anxiety. So it's like we're doing double the work of having some anxiety about something and then also trying to push it away. It takes a lot of energy. And a sort of Buddhist or contemplative framework for that would say, well, at least we can remove the avoidance. At least we can remove that sort of default instinct to just push it away. And then the thing might come closer. So the anxiety or whatever the difficulty is might come closer into our awareness. But when it's closer, we can actually create the opportunity to look at it. And so one thing that self-compassion practices can do, they help us to regulate enough so that we feel like we have the capacity to just really be with or sit with whatever is bothering us, but engage with it and relate to it in a more skillful way. So it's not through suppression or avoidance, but it's also not through letting the thing just completely overwhelm us, which is what the feeling of anxiety can be. It's just this like kind of storm of everything, and it can be hard to parse through and understand what's even wrong, what's actually going on. So there are a few frameworks or frameworks in terms of practices to work with this. And one I wanted to introduce today is a term or a practice and term coined by Tara Brach, who is a psychologist and pretty experienced, advanced meditation teacher and practitioner. And the acronym, I'll type it in the chat, is RAIN. I've brought this up in other series before if it sounds familiar. And that stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So this is a step-by-step process that we're going to use in our meditation practice today, but it's also something you can use in daily life, off the cushion, we like to say. If you feel like you're getting kind of ramped up or there's a lot going on, you feel a self-critical thought, or you just feel not very good and don't know why, you can kind of take yourself through this 4-step process to help to at least kind of diffuse some of the strain, the like suffering and extra tension around not knowing what is even bothering you, or avoiding it or trying to suppress it. We're welcoming it into our awareness, but on our terms. So we're offering it plenty of space. We're going to offer it plenty of curiosity and care, and of course, nurturing. But it's a way to really understand, like, how is this thing affecting the different parts of my life? How has it felt to be like sitting with this thing that's maybe weighing on my mind or heart? How can I actually be with it in a way that feels constructive and generative? And I would say the most important part about this, and then we'll get started, is to, as much as possible, come in with an openness and sort of attitude, a position of care and curiosity, almost like you're kind of investigating, like you're a scientist or explorer. Like, what's really going on here? What is happening? How is this affecting me? How is this affecting my life? And what do I need? Do I need reassurance? Do I need to give myself a kind gesture, like a hug or a hand on the heart? You know, what words or images come up? So yeah, remaining curious and open is my invitation to you today. And with that, I'm going to type Tara's name in the chat too. We'll go ahead and get started. So as usual, just find a position that feels comfortable and easeful for your body today. And also one that where you feel like, okay, this is a position where I feel a sense of sovereignty, where I feel like I'm ready to dive in and maybe, you know, do some of that investigative work. We'll start and end our practice with a bell. So just arriving in your comfortable seat or posture, it's completely okay to recline if you need to do that. Just finding a little more ease and comfort in the posture you've chosen. Maybe that means giving yourself a couple of last stretches. Maybe it means just doing a short body scan to see, like, where am I holding tension? Where could I adjust to make this a little more easeful for myself? As always in our practices here in this space, you're welcome to allow the eyelids to rest closed if that feels comfortable for you. And if not, just allowing a soft gaze, maybe with eyes half open, rest somewhere in the space in front of you. And from here, continuing to arrive in your breathing body. So that might mean noticing those contact points between yourself and the surface supporting you, where the earth is rising up to meet you, to create space to hold you, to support you. Maybe bottoms of the feet, backs of the legs, the sits bones, perhaps some support at the back. Becoming aware of the rise and fall of your natural breath. There's no need to shift or change anything here. There's no need to perform or make something happen. We're just arriving into this moment by noticing our physical sensation, what's happening. And of course, the breath is something that is consistently happening, whether we're aware of it or not, almost like an energetic backbone to our lives. And if you're feeling a little bit kind of sleepy or ungrounded in any way, I invite you to just take 3 more intentionally deeper breaths here, in through the nose if that's possible, and then out through the mouth, maybe with a sigh. Inviting in maybe grounding or refreshment. And as you exhale out, just allowing yourself to soften. And from here, we'll start to shift into our practice. So just kind of resting in your breathing body, resting in this moment, and resting in this shared space that we're in together. Go ahead and welcome into your awareness something that's been on your mind lately, maybe something that's been bothering you. It might be so close to the surface or at the surface, it's very obvious. And you're like, oh yeah, of course that's it. And if it's less obvious, just giving yourself some space and time here to notice, yeah, some point of tension or suffering in your life lately. And that could be internal, it could be a physical pain, it could be a mental tension or an unhelpful thought or worry or doubt. It could be something external in a relationship, at work, in your community. And if a lot is coming up, just noticing that with a little care and compassion, awareness, and with some kindness, just kind of selecting one that you feel like you'd like to work through in this practice today, knowing you can always go back and work with the other content that's coming up. So this is our first step, to simply recognize what's something that's been going on. And then we soften into this next step of allowing. What would it be like to allow this thing to be in your space, to be in your awareness, instead of going to that default of trying to push it away or distract yourself? I invite you to be brave, but also be caring, and just allowing it to be present in the space. Maybe even in this step of allowing, you sense a bit of relief. It's that relief of not having to shove it somewhere else, not having to avoid, just for these few minutes, just for this practice. Continuing to remain grounded, caring in your breathing body, and giving this thing as much space as it needs. So if it feels like it's too close and might feel like it's overwhelming or kind of overtaking you, just giving it some distance, giving it some space. You've invited it into your awareness, into your workspace. And we just allow it to be here for a change. Allowing yourself to ground into your breath, into your heart space if anything feels challenging. And then from here, perhaps this process has started naturally for you already. We shift to investigating with curiosity, with care. What is this thing really about? Almost like a scientist, kind of exploring all angles of something. What does this experience, this point of tension or suffering, bring up in your body when you feel it? When does it come up in your life? How does it impact you? Or maybe even the people around you. Remaining open and curious. Just exploring what the contents of this thing are, how they maybe weave into other aspects of life, maybe what emotions they're tied to. Noticing what opens, what's possible in terms of being with this thing when we allow it to be here. When, without trying to push it away or let it overtake us, we just get curious. Continuing for a few more moments here. And just noting that what you find out, it may be as simple as this more felt, embodied recognition of like, wow, this has been really hard. Or wow, this has definitely affected my life, my mind. And then from here, we shift into the final step of this practice, which is to nurture. So you've recognized what's maybe been weighing on your mind or your heart, allowed it into the space, into your awareness, and investigated. You've seen what it might be about in ways that you typically don't see. And now, with that understanding, we ask, what do I need to feel nurtured? What does this thing need to feel? Is it reassurance? Is it feeling seen, understood? Are there words of wisdom or encouragement arising from that wise part of ourselves? Maybe that say, it's okay. I know you've been suffering. Or I see you. I feel you. I'm with you. Maybe words of encouragement like, I know this is hard, but we'll get through it. Just giving yourself the care and compassion that you feel you need. Some soothing, some tenderness. It might feel like a gesture, maybe placing a hand at heart center, giving yourself a hug. Dropping any sort of expectations around what you should do or what's right or wrong, and just allowing for the space to listen, like what is needed, what needs nurturing, and how can I meet that? A practice in being kind to all parts of ourselves. Even those parts and experiences we might try to exile or push away, we've welcomed them into the space, and now we extend care, hold ourselves with compassion. Continuing with the nurturing for a few more moments here. And then we'll take just a few moments before we close, kind of extending this space of nurturing, but shifting into also a space of what some call after the rain. Noticing any shifts in your psyche, in your body, your heart, your energetic space. What has it felt like to go through this process? To bring awareness, maybe some understanding and nurturing to a part of you that's been suffering. Just allowing yourself to bask in that warmth and tenderness, that self-compassion. And then starting to notice the rise and fall of your breathing, the physicality of your breathing body, and the space of the room around you. And sealing your practice with a gesture if that feels right for you. And at the sound of the bell, coming back to our shared space. So taking your time to come back. If there's anything that arose for you in that practice, especially in the sort of investigating and nurturing steps that you'd like to remember that feel important, I welcome you to write those down, especially if a word or a phrase or a gesture that felt really soothing in the moment came up. Yeah, that's something you can draw on in daily life too. When just something difficult arises, like kind of coming back to that reinforced sense of nurturing or self-compassion, to start to build those connections in the brain can be really helpful. Recognize, I'm going to type as I do it, allow, investigate, and nurture.
Got it.
And that's Tara Brach. She came up with this specific acronym. The process is similar across many different practices of self-compassion, but this particular acronym is hers. Yeah.
Can you use this process with little kids? Would it work?
That's a great question. My first thought is yes. I think it depends developmentally, like the age we're talking about, and if they can kind of conceptualize what it is. But that's a great question if there's sort of kids' versions of this. And I would venture to say there are. If it can be communicated in language that makes sense to a developing, brain.
Right.
But yeah, it's a great practice of mindfulness. I think with kids and with adults, if there's some connection to the body established, it's helpful to start with like somatics, so sensations, and like really letting them be their own sort of explorer or scientist, like to figure something out. For example, if you can tell a child is really angry or mad, like, where's the mad happening in your body? Like, is it hot? Is it cold? Like that kind of thing can work well, kind of grounding it in the material a little bit more. Yeah, something to try.